Hello again guys, Mark Gray here, professional landscape photographer from Australia. Thank you for tuning in to my YouTube channel. A big thank you to everyone that has subscribed so far. Please be sure to hit the red subscribe link below the video if you haven't done so already, and also hit the bell icon to make sure that you're notified whenever we release a new video. So today I'm coming to you from beautiful Mills Beach. Colourful beach boxes here down in Mornington, and we're just down the road from our flagship gallery, and today we're going to be talking all about what I believe is the most important filter that any landscape photographer can own, the CPL or circular polarizer. So let's start by having a look at 3 of my images that I've captured using the CPL filter, all different shots from different locations, and we'll go through in detail why I use the CPL and why it's so important. So sit back and I hope you learned something new. Okay, so let's take a look at a pretty common polarizer filter. This one here is a screw-on filter, and any lens that has got a thread on the front of it will allow you to use a screw-on polarizer filter. So there's 2 parts to a polarizer that screws on. You have the section that actually screws to the lens, and then you have another section on the front here, and this is actually fully rotatable. That can rotate 360 degrees, and that is actually what adjusts your strength of the polarizer, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. So this screw-on filter I'm using today is a Nissi one. I am a Nissi ambassador, and I do believe that they are one of the best quality filters on the market. But let's talk now about some of the pros and cons of screw-on filters. So the most important thing with screw-ons is that they're super convenient. They pack in a very small case, they screw on, they're small, particularly one like this that is designed for a wide angle or ultra wide angle lens, so it's quite slim. One of the challenges though when you are doing landscape photography and you're shooting with ultra wide angle lenses, if you start to stack more and more filters in front of the lens, you'll get an effect called vignetting, which darkens the corners of your photos. This is something you want to avoid at all costs. So for that reason, I only use a screw-on polarizer when that's the only filter that I'm using. If I'm wanting to also stack other filters in front of that, then there's a different system that I would go to. Not only would I go to a different system if I'm looking to stack multiple filters, but there's also a range of lenses on the market that have what we call bulb fronts, so you can see that in there. Now these lenses typically don't have a screw thread, so they don't actually allow you to use a standard screw-on polarizer filter. Instead, Nissi have designed a fantastic system like so, and this allows you to actually create a filter thread like so that actually allows you just to screw much larger filter, obviously, into that system. From there, to rotate the filter, you actually just use these knobs here, and that will give you the same effect as spinning the front element on the screw-on polarizer. The other benefit of this, as I mentioned just before, is the ability to then put on more filters in front of the polarizer. So you can see there I have 2 other filter slots, and I can actually stack ND filters or graduated filters in front of the polarizer and get the effect that I'm going for in whatever shoot I'm doing. So this system here is a great workaround, but I personally own both types of polarizers because there are some times when I'm using a lens unlike this one and I just want to have the quickest, most convenient polarizer that I can access, and that is always going to be a screw-on filter. So I want you to think of a polarizer filter as being just like sunglasses for your camera lens. In fact, I'd go one step further than that, and I'd suggest that you get yourself a pair of polarized sunglasses if you haven't done so already. Wear them whenever you're shooting, particularly during the daylight hours, and that'll give you a little bit of a preview on what the scene will look like once it's actually got a CPL filter in front of the lens. That's a little tip for you, and let's move on now to what the Polarizer filter actually does for your photos. So the Polarizer or CPL filter is most famous for creating deep blue skies during the daytime. It does so much more than that though. It actually removes glare from absolutely everything in a scene, from the sky to the water to any other even slightly reflective surfaces, including trees, paths, timber, etc. It is such a powerful filter, and in removing glare from everything, it naturally increases contrast and color saturation, all in camera before you even get onto your computer. Now always remember when you're using a CPL filter that it will darken the scene, effectively by 1 to 2 stops, depending on the strength of the filter and the brand of the filter. If your camera is set to an automatic mode, then you don't need to worry about that 1 to 2 stop difference in the light. If you're in manual, however, make sure that you are checking your histogram and adjusting your settings accordingly. So we've talked about what a CPL is, and we've talked about what it does. Let's talk now about how to use it effectively. First thing you need to know is that a polarizer filter has 180 degrees of change. So when you look at this filter here, at this position, this is going to give us exactly the same result if we spin it 180 degrees. Every point in between those 2 points, however, is going to have a varying effect on our scene. So when you're adjusting the position of the front element of the filter, this is going to affect what part of your scene is being polarized. At one point, it'll polarize the sky. At another point, it'll polarize the land and the water. In between the two, it'll do a little bit of each. And it's your job to decide what you're wanting to use the polarizer for, and then set it accordingly. So let's take a look at that effect in action. It's important to always remember that you'll get the best effect in the sky when you're facing 90 degrees to the sun. Middle of the day when the sun's directly overhead in summer, you'll actually get a perfect polarization effect in any direction. I shoot 90% of my photos during the daylight hours with a CPL filter, but as we get closer to sunrise or sunset, I typically take it off. The reason for this is that I use ultra wide angle lenses on almost all my shots, and if you continue to use a polarizer, you'll get an effect called hot spots. That's when you get an uneven polarization effect across the scene. It'll be dark in one part of the sky and light in the other part of the sky. The only exception to this is when I'm shooting directly at the sun, perhaps over a rock pool for example, where I'm wanting to use the polarizer to take the glare out of the water so I can see the bottom of the rock pool. So remember, whenever you point your camera at the sun, a CPL filter will do nothing to the sky, it will only polarize the foreground. So let's talk now about those 3 photos that we looked at when we first started this video. The first one is a print that I released titled Beyond Paradise, and it was captured at a beautiful location in French Polynesia. Now this is a very typical use of a polarizer filter. Middle of the day, blue sky, scattered clouds, and I used the polarizer on a 15mm lens. The benefit of using a polarizer in that scene was firstly to take all of the glare out of the water. The watercolor was just sensational, but I didn't want the sun ruining it. Secondly, the sky has been polarized very nicely to take all of the glare out of the sky and give us that nice rich blue color. This next shot is titled Mystic Forest, and I captured this up in the beautiful Victorian high country in Australia. Now the light on this particular morning was beautiful just as the mist was clearing it was piercing through and creating some stunning contrast in the scene. The mist was lingering, however, and I wanted to use a polarizer to cut through the mist just that little bit more. It also increased the color saturation and the contrast in the scene nicely. The last photo is a print titled Painted that I captured at a beautiful location in Tasmania known as the Bay of Fires. And this scene, I was shooting the opposite direction to the sun at sunset. And I was using a graduated filter over the sky to improve the exposure. But I did notice that there just wasn't enough of that beautiful color in the water coming through. Also, the red lichen on the rocks didn't have enough contrast in it. So I pulled the CPL out and I used that as well as the graduated filter to increase the contrast, improve the color saturation, and just take that extra layer of glare out of the scene. So guys, I'm sure you'll agree that the CPL filter is a very special accessory in any landscape photographer's kit. Personally, I wouldn't leave home without one. Thank you so much for watching again. I hope you've learned something new. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to hit subscribe below. Also hit the alarm bell to keep updated with new videos as we release them. Hope you have a great week. I'm going to pack up now and I'm going to take a walk down this beautiful beach.